skirt time. Hello friends, I am so excited that you are here. Welcome to my channel, or welcome back to my channel. I am Carly B. I am a sewist and a lover of all things creative. If you also are a creative at heart like me, please feel free to hit that subscribe button if you're keen. And without further ado, let's get straight into the video. So today I'm going to be making my Milkmaid dress, and if you've been following me on Instagram for a while, you've probably seen it before. It's a really simple summer dress with lots of volume in the skirt, so it's a really fun statement piece that you can either layer over things in the winter or you can just wear it on its own in summer. It's really versatile, it's really fun, and I will show you how it's made, so if you want to sew along with me, let's do it. Also, throughout this process, I'm going to be doing more of a patchwork style, so I'm going to use a bunch of different patterns and colours. But if you just want to keep it simple, just grab one fabric. A cotton fabric is perfect. You're going to need 5 meters of it, and you can just keep it simple, and it will still be amazing. Here is the checklist of everything that you need before you start your Milkmaid dress. You need the 2 bodices cut out. You need 2 facings cut out. You need 4 shoulder straps. My design has a bow in it, so the measurements are 4 inches wide and 45 inches long, but if you don't want the bow, you can just make that a lot shorter of a strap. Then you need 2 straps to cinch in at the waist. They are 3 inches wide and 34 inches long. I like them to be really long as well, but you can do them whatever length you like. Then you're going to need the first panel of your skirt, which is 10.5 inches wide and 60 inches long. You need 2 of these panels and 4 pockets to go in each of the sides of that first tier. Lastly, for the second tier of the skirt, you need 2 panels, and each of them are 27 inches wide and 120 inches long. When I cut this out from store-bought fabric, I usually need 4 different panels to get this fitting in my 5 meters of fabric, but because I'm patchworking today, I can just do 2 finished tiers that are 27 inches wide and 120 inches long. So the second panel should be roughly double the size of the first panel. But of course, you can adjust this depending on how much gathering you want that second tier to have. It's totally up to you. So to start, you can cut out your pattern with your fabric folded over and your pattern on that fold. Once you have your bodice and your facing cut out, you can begin cutting out the rest of your garment. So at the end of the cutting out process, you'll have 2 bodice pieces and 2 facing pieces, and then you can grab your ruler to cut out your skirt pieces. One of the things that helped me so much when I started sewing was just buying a bunch of patterns, even just from op shops, and looking at the shapes of the pieces. What does a sleeve look like? And what does a skirt look like? And just studying the different curves and that kind of thing. The more I've looked at how patterns are, it's just started to make more and more sense. And now it can be like, oh, I need a pocket. I'll just cut out the shape of a pocket. So I just wanted to say that because if it's not making sense yet, it will make sense. The more you look at it, the more it's just going to get ingrained into your brain. Like, go easy on yourself. Because it's a big thing to learn, and you're doing great. Now this is the rough shape pocket, which is really easy to trace around your hand, but I'll link a really good pattern below as well if you just rather use a pattern for your pockets. Now the next thing you need to do is just press those straps really nice and clean before you sew, and your bodice and facing pieces as well. And then I sewed my bodice and facing pieces right sides together, right down that side seam. It's important to note as well that although I am sewing on an industrial machine, your domestic machine is absolutely perfect for this kind of project. It'll do that straight stitch nicely, and it will also finish the edges with a lovely zigzag stitch. So don't feel like you need to get an industrial or an overlocker to do these projects. When I started making straps, I hated it so much because I was like trying to get this turned out just by shimming it like this. Oh, so frustrating. Use a paintbrush or even a pen will work. And because I've sewn it shut like this, I'm just going to put my paintbrush in the sewn end, and we're basically just going to push that sewed in end all the way to the opening. So I'm really just threading it through until the opening comes out the top like this. And now my strap is turned out. And all you have to do is just make sure that these ends really get turned all the way out, and then just give it a really good press. So easy. Game changer. Now you don't have to do this step, but I decided to top stitch my straps, which just makes them look really clean and finished, and I like it, but it's totally up to you whether you want to do that step. And then I ironed my seams of the bodice and the facing really nice and flat, and finished the raw edge of my facing with an overlocking stitch. But of course you can use a zigzag, it'll be the exact same. It's just because that seam is going to be exposed in the finished garment. So now comes the fun part where I am going to start wedging my straps in between my facing and my bodice. So I'm going to put my bodice and my facing right sides together and then put the straps in between. I'll show you. This can be a little bit tricky if it's your first time, but just have patience and have faith. You can do it. Keep that facing and the bodice right sides together, and then the straps, you want the raw edge of them to be sticking out the top, and then sew all the way around the top in a loop, and just clip any of that seam allowance that you have left over. And I like to snip into the armholes as well, just so that when I put it right sides out, it's going to lay as flat as possible. Okay, so at this stage you should have a finished top bodice kind of vibe. I've got my little bows on the sleeve, it's looking cute. I think at this stage you can decide whether you want to top stitch that facing down or not. I kind of just see what mood I'm in, but today I'm definitely in a top stitching mood, so I'm going to do that before I head on to the skirt. I'm going to start with my first tier, and then I'm going to do my second tier, and I'm just going to make it as if I've already patchworked all of my material. So I'm going to do that first, and then once I have my strips ready to be sewn into a skirt, then I will come back to you. So hopefully you can see I've now patchworked my two strips that are going to make up the first tier of my skirt, and they are all ready to go. I believe I said it before, they're around 60 inches long and 10.5 inches wide. And so now, before we attach them together, right sides together, I'm going to prepare the pockets to put on this side seam, and also the little strips that are gonna act as waist ties. So I started by pressing my pockets so they were nice and flat, and then I overlocked the outside edge of them just so that they wouldn't fray because they'd be left exposed in the finished garment. And then once I had finished all of those edges, I started preparing the waist ties. It's really similar to making bias tape in that you fold it in half and then in half again, except now we're going to sew that edge down all the way, fold up the bottom edge twice, and then sew that down to finish it. And once you've finished your waist tie and your pockets, you can pin them in place on either side of your skirt panel, and then zigzag stitch or overlock that raw edge down. I should just say that if you don't want to put a pocket in, that is totally fine. If it feels a bit intimidating, I've totally understand. I've been there before as well. But if you are putting a pocket in, just be careful that you have enough space at the top and the bottom to attach the tiers. You probably just need about 2 centimeters at the very minimum. There won't be a lot of wiggle room, but I promise you it can fit. Also, one last thing, whenever I'm sewing on my overlocker, please know that you can do the exact same finishing stitch on your regular domestic machine with your zigzag setting. The overlocker is amazing and it's really helpful, but it's not essential. You can still finish your edges really nicely on your domestic sewing machine. Back to pocket things. I then just top stitched that edge so it was nice and secured, and then pinned both sides of the skirt right sides together and sewed all the way around from the top, all the way around the pocket and then the bottom. Honestly, that feels like the most fiddly part of the process, but now you should be left with a big loop of your first tier of skirt, and if you chose to do pockets in the side seam, you should have a little pocket and you should have a little tie sticking out. So now what I'm going to do is stitch gathering stitches all the way around the top, which are just 2 parallel lines in my longest stitch length, and then I'm going to gather them by hand to the circumference measurement of my bodice and attach those 2 pieces together. I've sewn my parallel stitches, so now I'm just going to start gathering my top tier of the skirt. My top tier, it is totally gathered now, so I'm going to pin this right sides together with my bodice piece. I'm going to stitch it, and then I'm going to overlock the raw edge and take out my basting stitch. I know that was a lot of steps, but I'll show you along the way. Here we are, pinning it to the bodice. Super easy, but takes a little bit of time, so have patience. And then I sew that down right in between both of the basting stitches, as shown in this video here. Then I overlocked this raw edge and took out the basting stitches. And voila! Not bad. Okay, we are almost there. I'm going to do all of the same things for the second tier. Just gonna make my patchwork skirt, gonna sew it into a big circle, gonna add those 2 basting stitches to gather it all up, and then the only different thing we have to do is hem it. Because I've made this piece so many times and I know the length that I want for the skirt, honestly, I like hemming it at this stage before I've gathered it. It's just a bit easier and I like the process more. So I hemmed it and then I gathered it. Once you've got it gathered, you can pin it to this first tier of the skirt and then just repeat the process, sewing it and then overlocking that raw edge. She is all done. I'm so excited with the result. I'll show you properly in a moment. I love making this Milkmaid dress because it's so simple, but because of all of the volume in the skirt, it feels like quite a dramatic piece as well, and you can do some really good twirls in it, which is very important. Some of the post-sewing tips that I would have would definitely be to take your time with the gathering, especially the second tier is a really long tier, and if you're trying to rush through that, you might snap your threads. So definitely just put a good podcast on and take your time with it. That will serve you really well. On to the montage. Thank you so much for being here and watching this video. I appreciate you so much. If there's anything in particular you would like to see in the coming weeks, be sure to leave me a comment and I will absolutely add that to my YouTube video list of things to do. That's all for this week. Thank you so much for watching and I'll see you in the next video.